I'm James Rule. Welcome to the Lonely Leader podcast, where we help existing and aspiring leaders find clarity, build resilience, drive performance, and enhance fulfillment. Leadership essential, tenacity, holding the line when the going gets tough. That's the focus of today's episode. And for those of you that have enjoyed previous episodes of the Lonely Leader podcast, you'll know that we have a range of leadership essential episodes. And those are designed to spotlight and dissect these leadership traits that I believe each and every one of us needs to weave into our own personal leadership style and DNA in order to truly optimize our performance and the impact that we have on the people that we lead. And tenacity is the focus for today. And in keeping with our usual flow and theme of how we put these podcast episodes together, we'll be talking about why it's important. I'll be pulling out a couple of leaders that are truly inspirational and leaders that I find epitomize so many of the core traits of the Leadership Essentials series. And without a shadow of a doubt, they epitomize tenacity. And then last but not least, I'll pull together some actionable takeaways that you can reflect on and to weave into your own leadership style so that we ensure we draw out that natural tenacity in you, but also enhance it to meet any and every challenge that comes your way on your leadership journey. And I think using a sporting quote that is world famous, often attributed to Mike Tyson, but in actual fact, I believe it came from his trainer, Cus D'Amato, and that was that everybody has a plan until they are punched in the face. Now, from a boxing context, obviously, it's drawing our attention to the fact that once you start receiving blows, it's very hard to stay focused on the plan. Now, thankfully, very few of us have to step into a boxing ring, but the principle will resonate with each and every one of us. When you're sitting in a nice air-conditioned meeting room, discussing strategy, it all seems to click into place. And then you bring that strategy to life, you put it into the real world, and you can be met with challenge and adversity, left, right, and center. And all of a sudden, that strategy doesn't feel as lightly of success as it did when it was at its embryonic stage being discussed in that meeting room. So tenacity for me is not stubbornness. Stubbornness implies that there's one way to do things, we're not going to deviate, this is the only way. It's far more nuanced than that. I think tenacity is about having the belief and the strength to hold the line around your values and your vision. That's not saying we can't adapt and tweak the strategy, but if we think of our destination, it's holding the line to ensure we get to our destination, but undoubtedly being willing to show some agility and some flexibility in how we get there. So let's focus on a couple of leaders that epitomize this trait. First and foremost, I want to spotlight Winston Churchill, the UK Prime Minister during World War II. Now, that horrendous period in history truly tested so many individuals, none more so than Winston Churchill, leading against insurmountable odds, it seemed at times. At times, the morale of the country, the morale of the other senior leaders that were helping him guide through that military effort was sapped, was waning. And he must have felt an insurmountable weight on his shoulders to be able to hold course and to keep moving everybody forward. And it was the ultimate test of his tenacity. And I believe Winston Churchill just moving away from that chapter in history is another example of a leader who has experienced challenge, stress, adversity on his journey. And any of you that have read around him will know of some of those episodes, those chapters in history that would have quite easily allowed him to retreat from that public arena, to step away from politics, but he had the tenacity to keep going. So I admire his ability to overcome adversity, and without a shadow of a doubt, he is one of the most inspirational leaders in history, that when everything seemed against him, when people's opinion was negative, when people's suggestions of strategy were opposed to his, he had that ability to keep going. He had that tenacity to keep moving forward. And one of his most famous quotes, which I think frames this perfectly, is that success is the ability to go from one failure to another with no loss of enthusiasm. And I want to come back to that quote a little bit later in the episode. Another leader that truly epitomizes tenacity, and one that I have a huge amount of respect and admiration for, is Abraham Lincoln. And one of the best books I've read around leadership was this book, Lincoln, Team of Rivals, by Doris Kearns Goodwin. And it talks about Abraham Lincoln's journey. And I hadn't realized just how much tenacity he had to have to overcome challenge after challenge, personal grief, public ridicule, you name it. It feels like Abraham Lincoln had to overcome it before he even got into the office of President of the United States. And then, of course, he had global challenges around the abolition of slavery, the Civil War within America, and he overcame that. He led the country through it, the ultimate test of his tenacity. So you can see the similarity, different times in history, but the admiration I have for Churchill and Lincoln is that at so many times they were isolated. My business is called The Lonely Leader. It's a nod towards the isolation and loneliness of leadership and why it shouldn't be that way. And this very content is a key tool that we use to help address that loneliness and isolation. But in Lincoln and Churchill's case, at times they must have felt that loneliness, and they drew upon their tenacity to keep moving themselves forward and their very nations forward. So I would struggle to find two better examples, and it's easy to dismiss that and say, well, that's a long time ago, different times, I'm not at that level of leadership. My point here is not that you need to be a history buff and to have a real passion for history as I do, more the fact that here are two human beings, normal flesh and blood men, dealing with immense pressure, a huge array of challenges, and they had the tenacity and the composure and the resilience to overcome them. So when we distill that back to our own personal challenges, be it in our personal lives or in our professional role, I want them to be a source of strength to inspire you to say, actually, I can overcome this. It's immensely stressful, but I do have the tenacity to keep going and keep moving forward. Now, on a lighter note, and in no way trivializing the immense tenacity shown by those men, I just had my own small test of tenacity. I recorded this podcast. I was happy with the content. I went to click the end of the recording and realized I didn't press record in the first place. So I'd just been talking down the microphone and I had to do it all again. So I had that challenge. I had that moment. I'm sure any of you that have ever done a podcast, you'll have been there, where I wanted to blame somebody, anybody. I could only blame myself. I sat down, had a coffee, and here I am, take two. So a very simple example of tenacity in place, but we've all got the need for it, because the harsh reality of life, as we all know, and particularly in leadership, is that we are going to be faced with adversity and challenge on an almost daily basis. And I say this regularly to clients. I say it regularly on the podcast. I'm not saying that to frighten anybody or to give anybody a sense of foreboding. It's just the way of the world. So rather than hope for the fact that I don't get any challenge or stress of adversity, I am much more about being proactive, to focus on what you can control, to look at this series of leadership essentials and ensure that they're all in your leadership toolkit, so that when that challenge and adversity comes, you take a deep breath and you move through it and out the other side. So in that spirit, let's dive into some actionable takeaways. I believe we've all got a level of tenacity inside us, but I believe we can enhance it, and these steps are designed to do just that. Tip number one, stay anchored to your purpose. We've talked a lot about this on previous episodes. There's a link to the alignment between purpose and high performance in the show notes. But as with everything in life, when we truly understand, when we have absolute clarity on why we are doing something, it makes it much easier to have that tenacity to be able to keep moving forward when challenge comes. That's the same for us as individual leaders and indeed for our teams. Make sure that that why is clear, is communicated well, and that gives us strength to draw from when we're moving through that challenge and adversity. Tip number 2, expect resistance. It ties back into what I've just been saying. Wouldn't it be great if every strategy you put into play was 100% successful, if there was no stress, if you just moved seamlessly through one day, one quarter, 1 month, 1 year to the next? Life, leadership, it's not like that. So expecting challenges to come, rolling up your sleeves, taking a deep breath and say, okay, let's step forward into this is the only way. And actually, if we're truly honest with ourselves, we can do a little bit of preliminary work at the embryonic stage of strategy. We can strength test it. We can ask ourselves and our leaders around us, our team, where do we think this will be tested? This policy, this strategy, this product, whatever it may be, where do we think we will meet challenge and adversity? And if that arrives, as we anticipate it will, how will we react? It's a great exercise because then when you roll out the product, the policy, the strategy, whatever it may be, and that very scenario arrives, it's so much easier to hold your composure, to retain that tenacity, to keep moving because you already have a plan. You're not blindsided by that challenge. You already have expected it, and it makes it so much easier to step forward into meeting it. And that takes me nicely into my next tip: control the controllables. I say it almost on a daily basis with clients. You'll have heard me say it on numerous podcasts, but that challenge and adversity that I alluded to in the previous tip, it will arrive. Now, we have a conscious choice to make. Are we going to lose energy, focus, concentration, and allow our resilience to drain away, thinking and focusing on all the things that are outside of our control? We all do it, no judgment, but it is the very definition of madness because by its very essence, we can't control it. So what are we doing talking about it, dissecting it, repeating it over and over in all of our conversations? The challenge for you as a leader is to move your group and for us as individuals to move our thinking into the things we can control. And I accept that's a challenge. Our brain is hardwired to move us towards the threat, to move us towards that we fear. And it may be that there's a real imbalance. We can think of numerous things that sit outside of our control, but only 1 or 2 things that we can control. And that's absolutely fine. Execute those 1 or 2 things. Ask the question again, now what I can control. And I guarantee with movement and momentum, there will come new thinking. And those 1 or 2 things will lead to 1 or 2 other things. And everybody rallies around the controllables. The next tip is reframe failure. No strategy is 100% successful. Yes, you're going to focus on the controllables. Yes, you're going to have that clear sense of purpose and why you're doing things. But even with those previous steps in play, you will still encounter failure at some point. And that's absolutely normal and okay. Lots of my clients are sports fans, lots are not. It doesn't matter. This analogy will hold sway with you irrespective whether you are a passionate sports fan or not. If you imagine a team competing in a multiple month series of fixtures of matches, there is a culmination at the end. You may be the ultimately successful team. You may win the league or you may win the Super Bowl. But very few teams in the history of sports have ever started a season and won every single week without any dip in form, without any mistakes, or without any failure. In fact, the normal is a series of peaks and troughs, great performances and poor performances, mediocre performances and terrible performances. Now, do those players say, we failed, we lost a game, we lost significantly to the opposition, so we should all just quit, give up the strategy, abandon our jobs as professional athletes? No, they don't. They reflect back on what can I control. The number 1 controllable is what can I learn. There's often a lot of emotive rhetoric around failure. It's not good to fail. Why are you encouraging failure? And as with everything we talk about, there's nuance. I'm not saying for a second it's good to make the same mistakes over and over and over and repeat your failures. That's a definition of madness. What is important, though, is to recognize that you will make mistakes, that you will have failure. You must focus in on reviewing it, dissecting it with your colleagues, with your boss. Take out the learnings and ensure, to the best of your endeavors, you don't make mistakes again. But that doesn't mean you won't make another mistake in a different area or you won't encounter some form of failure. And as I said earlier in the podcast, I want to go back to the Winston Churchill quote that success is moving from one failure to another with no loss of enthusiasm. You can't lose that tenacity. You can't lose that belief to keep moving forward if you hit adversity, because who in life hasn't, in their personal or professional lives? And that takes me to my next tip. Use your setbacks as stories. This has multitude of benefits. Those people that are perhaps starting out on their professional journey will still fear that fear of failure. I can't make a mistake. I know I did. I know I did when I stepped into that CEO tenure. But then you start to realize everybody's made mistakes. Everyone's had those dips in form that we talk about in a sporting context. So normalizing that through your stories helps drive the resilience and tenacity in your team. Why do I enjoy reading around historical figures like Churchill, Abraham Lincoln, and other icons of industry, the arts, business? It's because they have a story and you learn from their story. You recognize this very point. They overcame adversity, challenged, they made mistakes. They held fast, they held the line, they fell back on their tenacity, and ultimately they prevailed. And that's the narrative that builds the Hollywood story. Who enjoys going to watch a film where the hero of the piece just is successful from minute one till the end, full stop, the end of the film? So many of the iconic films are around an underdog who overcomes their adversity, who experiences failure and then triumphs. That's the very narrative of most of the iconic Hollywood movies for a reason. That's what we're drawn to. And you will have not necessarily a Hollywood script, but you will have experiences that normalize your challenges and that inspire your team to say, well, the boss has been through similar things. It's okay. It's okay to discuss it. The last thing you want is an environment where people fear failure to such a level that they play small. They don't innovate. They don't speak up. They don't enhance strategy. They don't take the decisions that could catapult them and the organization forward because there's such a fear of failure within the culture. If we can spin that round to say, yes, we're not here to make the same mistakes over and over, so we need a robust review process. We need to disseminate the learnings well, but let's not fear failure. Let's see it as a stepping stone on that learning piece. The next tip is surround yourself with resilient people. And this ties into the previous point about sharing the stories. It's very hard to be a resilient leader that drives every aspect of the business, that is the source of tenacity for the entire organization, and that just has bottomless levels of resilience. It's not realistic. You will have days where you feel drained. You will have days where you feel flat. You will have days where your vision is being tested and you think, am I actually on the right track? And that's why men like Lincoln and Churchill are so inspirational for me, because I think at so many parts of their career, they lacked true confidence, true team ethos around them, driving in the same direction. Often they were on the receiving end of so many naysayers saying, you're wrong, your strategy is wrong, the direction's wrong, we need to make changes. So where you can reflect, what is the team around you like? Do you feel like there's a high level of resilience and tenacity in that group? And if there isn't, this is something that I am very, very passionate about. I spend a lot of time with leaders, helping them shape and develop the right leadership team around them, both for them as an individual, but also for the industry, for the organization as a whole. It's a key part of your legacy as a leader. So as a quick tangent, if that's something you're struggling with or you want to explore, as with all of the topics we talk about, and as so many of you are doing, which I truly appreciate, reach out to me personally. Connect on LinkedIn, DM me there, or use the email. Because when these subjects resonate, if it's highlighting a gap and you're not quite sure how to address it, then perhaps it's worth us exploring that coaching or mentoring type discussion to help you address it. But you need resilient people around you. They will help drive that tenacity and you will help them. You draw strength from each other. The next tip is adopt micro goals. We all recognize that the big picture can be overwhelming, particularly if we're being buffeted by the challenge and adversity we keep alluding to in this episode. So how do you keep people on track? Sometimes you need to bring the focus down. You need to narrow things in. You need to give people that tangible next step to build momentum and to energize the team again. And sports coaches do this very well. They will have certain signals or anchors, certain calls where the players on the field focus in on the next play. What are we all doing in the next few moments of this match? Not the next 80 minutes, not the next several quarters, not the next month, the next play. That play is executed, everybody is present, focused in. The tension dissipates a little bit, the confidence lifts a little bit, and then we look at the next play. Now, we're not in sport, we're in business, but the principles are the same. People can become overwhelmed if they feel like they've been faced with a lot of resistance. It seems so far away to get to the end game, the destination. What's the next play? That's where the micro goal comes in, because we're all wired in the same way. If we don't feel like we're making momentum and we don't feel like we're making forward progress and we feel like we're being buffeted and we're not being particularly proactive, it all starts to drain our energy, to disempower our mindset. We need to flip that round quickly. The micro goal allows us to focus in, to build that momentum. With the momentum comes the confidence to do it again. As we do it again, the momentum grows, our mindset is more empowered, and it's so much easier to find that tenacity to keep moving forward. So micro goals help, particularly when you feel that people's tenacity and their resilience is on the wane. And my last tip is, don't confuse tenacity with stubbornness. We said this right at the start of the episode. That's one of the misconceptions I come across a lot. Well, isn't a tenacious leader just someone who just digs their heels in and says, it's my way or the highway, we're not moving? Absolutely not. Let's look at it this way. You have a destination, an end point. You want to hold everybody to the ability to get there, and your tenacity helps lead them to that point. But the best leaders, as we've talked about in previous episodes, will retain that open-mindedness, that humility to listen to the feedback from the people they respect all around them, their senior teams, their staff. Why wouldn't you listen to that? And yes, you might tweak or slightly evolve strategy, but your end destination remains true. The vision that you have the tenacity towards leading everybody to the achievement of remains true, but you don't dig your heels in and say, we're only doing it one way, because that you drifted into that narcissistic, dictatorial leadership style that benefits nobody. So it isn't about stubbornness. It's about a willingness to say, I'll hold the line, stay with me, whatever we face together, and I will help lead us through that. And I'm sure you can think of leaders that you've admired and respected through your career that have done that. I've talked about some people on a global stage in Winston, Churchill and Abraham Lincoln, but I've also had the pleasure both on the sporting field and in the boardroom to think of leaders that inspired me with their tenacity. And as with everything we talk about, you are the emotional thermostat of the organization. If you can bring that tenacity to the fore in your words and your actions, you will inspire your people to get the best out of them. So I wish you the very best of luck on these reflections and your continued leadership journey. Thank you for the continued feedback. I say it regularly on the episodes, but I will never tire of saying it. The interaction with the Lonely Leader community through the DMs, through the emails is so fulfilling for me, and it's something that helps me continue to shape content so that hopefully it's relevant for the modern day leader to meet you where you are on your journey and help you navigate through the challenges of modern day leadership. I wish you the very best of luck. Thanks for listening to the Lonely Leader podcast. I'd be very grateful if you could share and follow if the content resonates. And if you're looking for additional free resource to support your continued growth and development, then please do check out our social media and website details in the show notes. Remember, quality leadership on the outside must always start within.